Hello. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Thank you for joining us again for our second session. So this session, we're going to be joined by Nick Iverson, another one of our data park engineers. And Nick has been with Capstone again for a number of years in the implementation engineering role. He comes from the University of Washington, again, their chemical engineering program. And he's going to be showing us identifying and using golden runs in Centerline. So it lines up very well with what Adam just showed us, where you can dig in to the run browser and use it to find periods of time that you like. Now, this is once you find a good run, a golden run, what can you do with that? How could you set it up so you can maybe retrieve that data in Data Park? And kind of an interesting thing is what he's going to be showing you, he'll be demoing in 7, but is available in 5.6. So you won't be able to use Adam's new criteria features to find your runs, but you will be able to use this with our current run browser features to find periods and then save them as a selected run and view them, use them later. So now we're going to jump over to Nick Iverson, and he's going to talk about identifying using golden runs and centerlines. And we'll be back for Q&A when we're all done. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nicholas Iverson. I am an implementation engineer with Capstone Technology, and I've been here for about 4 years now. And today, we've been doing all this training for the conference, and today I am here to talk to you about identifying and using golden runs in Data Park. So golden runs is actually something that I have trained on before. We'll actually see some items from our last conference where myself and another sales engineer from Capstone also presented on something. So we'll see some items from there, and then also just sort of generally how to use golden runs. Okay. So let's get started. So today we'll start with sort of a motivation. So we'll talk about some definitions, and then also just why would you want to use these generally and in Data Park specifically. We'll move on to the run browser. So I know there's been some training on the run browser recently, but I just want to make sure that everyone's kind of on the same page, because it's a really important portion of golden runs. Next, we'll talk about actually finding these golden runs. So how do we find these golden runs? What analysis do we use? Just the initial portion before you even actually get to finding the run itself. How do you evaluate a golden run, and then find it with some Data Park's tools? And then next, we'll get into saving golden runs. So once you've found a golden run that you like, how do you save it into ParkView? And then we'll get into using golden runs. So this will be all the baked-in things that you can do with a golden run, but then also some of the custom tools that we've made. And then we'll end with a little Q&A. All right. All right, so motivation. So motivation here is, you have an ideal period of production. That's what a golden run really is some time that you really thought that your production was going well. So it might be a certain grade run in a continuous batch, or product run, or in a non-continuous process, like a batch process, a reactor process, where you have a particular batch or series of batches that were just really good. They met the profile that you wanted. So that would be what a golden batch is, and we want to use that golden batch as some sort of standard, right? To either the standard of comparison to compare our other batches against, or to use it as a calculation tool. So we could even set that as a set point or limits, and then compare our current process against it. And of course, to that effort, we'd want to be able to bring that data readily into a display. So how would we be able to find that golden run simply, and then bring it into various ParkView displays? And of course, you might want to calculate certain KPIs, OEE, that kind of thing. with this golden run. And maybe doing maybe even like integrations, right? Integrations around a set point to determine how well your process is doing. Okay, so let's go ahead and start with the Run browser. So Run browser is a trend tool, and actually you can find it in a lot of charts, but started as a trend tool, you can launch directly from the trend to view period-based data. So that could be any kind of period. It could be an absolute period where you just set this start time and this end time yourself. It could be just a time span, 8 hours, 7 days, any of the time spans you can find in trend, or can dream up yourself. So say last month. Or it could be a more process-related one. So for example, a batch run or a grade run or production day, like that. Sort of the purpose of the Run browser is to bring back data in a different way than you'd normally find in trend. So trend is a continuous in time, right? From the start to the end, you see all of the data, whereas runs may be discontinuous. So for example, if I wanted to get all the batches where I made a certain item, certain recipe, there may be several days, several months between different batches. And so what we'll see is that we can see all that data chronologically, but we'll see discontinuities in between. We can also view data in different ways. So there are certain run modes where what we have pictured here actually is up here consecutive run mode, but we also have compare run mode. So consecutive is where you can just view them in chronological order by start time. But then one of my actually favorite run modes here is compare. So compare run mode is where you actually overlay each batch or run on top of one another, and then you can compare their profiles. Okay, so let's go into a demo. We've got a video here. I'll just kind of talk over. Okay, so here I have a batch style process. You can see that these are all kind of delineated by this batch number tag, these white lines we see in between. And clearly we have this sort of repeating profile. And what I'm looking at is my average temperature of a digester. And so I want to be able to return these all separated. Right now I just see them all as a continuous batch, but these may be different objects or things. So I can do that with the Run browser. And so I do that by right-clicking and then going to the Run browser. So just right-click in the plot area. And then we'll open up the Run browser. And by default, we'll open to the Run Filter tab. And so here you can see just some settings I already have pre-made. I don't want to get too deep in the weeds here. We'll just talk about kind of the 30,000 foot view, where I'm looking up a product or say a batch, and I'm getting the last 5 of them from now back 90 days, and I'm constraining it to be at least 30 minutes in length. So a couple of short ones, I don't want to include those. So now I can press load runs, and we'll see now I've got those runs. All those 5 of those runs in consecutive order. Now this is a consecutive basis, so where they're all continuous, but I can delete one of these, and now we'll see this discontinuity pop up. So we can show discontinuous data here. So that's the Run browser. We can do a lot of different things here. We can also send runs to the grid. So previously in pre-7.0, the runs grid was its own tab, but now the runs grid actually just appears at the bottom of the run filter. And so from here, we can do things like multi-select these various runs and then load just those. So we press load selected. We'll see, out of the way here, we'll see just the 2 that I selected. And I can also drag and drop. Just drag these and then drop them onto the trend. And we'll see that show up. Okay. All right, so that's the run browser. I do want to point out actually that drag and drop is pretty important. So for example, using that, we could say, with the settings I just had, we can grab some of those runs. We could go and change those settings, send those runs to the grid, and then also add those in as well. So there's a lot of different opportunity for us to mix and match the runs that we're looking at. Okay. So now let's talk about finding golden runs. So finding golden runs, we have some analytical tools at our disposal. Of course, the sort of simplest one is the visual inspection. So how close to this does this reach our set points? How just knowing what you know about the process, does this profile look right? Does it match all the other profiles? Do we see kind of an average profile? Is this meeting our centerlining goals if you have a continuous process? That kind of thing. We can also use calculations or aggregates. So for example, I could again make an integration that shows how close this was to the set point, sort of like some control style integrations, or I could integrate the production rate and see, just kind of filter on the maximum amount of production. Or we could use aggregates as well. So things like the time average. What's the maximum time average of the production rate over that time? And then also we can use custom tools. So custom tools like kind of what I have pictured here, sort of golden run finder. We'll talk about this later, but various ways to use these calculations and use other criteria to pull back runs, and then between those runs, select what you like. And then actually locating that run. So this is how we determine what a golden run might be, and then locating that run we can do in the run browser and then in Centerline in a similar fashion as well. And actually really in all charts. I'm kind of going over Centerline and Trend because they're slightly different UIs, but between Centerline and most of actually all of our other charts that use run browser, you'll see the same UI. Okay. So now, as far as actually saving a run goes, we'll use, just in the run browser from Trends, we can see what we did earlier by sending to grid, where that was where we loaded selected runs and did some drag and dropping. You can also right-click that run and then save as a selected run, and it will give you some options about naming and start times and end times. You can add comments and things like that. You can add actually what's called a priority. So you can also order your runs, your golden runs, based on just a priority you give them. So you could say, this is the top priority, priority number 1, priority number 2, priority number 3, etc. And then things without priority or with the same priority are then prioritized by their start time. So start time descending. But then after that, there are some other options we'll go through about automatically returning, say, X number of selected runs based on priority. So you can actually set up the run browser to, rather than you searching through and picking it up, it will automatically return those. So that priority field can be pretty important. But then in sort of Centerline and charts, really everywhere you see that run browser tab, it's the same process. There's just a slightly different interface because the run browser is actually integrated into that display, and there's buttons are in a slightly different place. So we'll go over that as well. Okay. Okay. So here I have an actual run browsed process. That same process we're looking at earlier. And I have these all into individual runs. And kind of what I'm looking for is my ideal profile. Right? So I'll look through here, and I like this one. Let's say I like this one in particular. I can use the smart mouse to find its batch number 63. And then I'll use the run browser to go find that. Let's right click, go to run browser. And then I'll use the same settings that I use to generate this, and then just send those runs to the grid. And then if we use that product or batch number column, we can find our batch easily. Right click, save as selected run. And then here comes up those options, like name, so I can name this my own thing. So let's do golden run reactor number 3. And I'll add comments. I'll add comment here, ideal temperature for reactor, or profile for reactor number 3. And then, of course, from here we can change all these other settings. So here's that priority I mentioned. And we can change the grade, start times, end times, all sorts of stuff. I'm going to leave this just as one, though, for now. OK, so now we have our selected run or saved golden run. We can go to selected runs tab and then press get runs. And now we'll see the run I just saved. So if we look at that run name here, we have the golden run for reactor 3. And there's my comment as well. OK. So that is this in trend. Now in run browser, I have essentially the same things that are pulled back. So see that run number 63, it's third from the left. And then I'll use the run browser. It's in the charts, it's over on the left as a tab, a little like ribbon kind of thing. This is largely the same. Let's make sure I've got the same settings here. It's all grades, yeah, all grades, we need to change that too. But same settings as before. And so now I'll send runs to the grid. You'll see that button's a little bit different place. But from here on, the same procedure. Right-clicking and saving as a selected run. And we'll give it a slightly different name. There is kind of a character limit here. So I'm going to shorten things up a little bit and just note that this is from Centerline so we can distinguish the ones that I saved. Again, it's ideal temperature profile for reactor 1, reactor 3, that is. It's annoying, but same options. Go ahead and save it. And then if we go up to the selected runs tab, we'll be able to press get runs and find that same. Now you see I have 2 here. And if we go and find that run name, there's that second one. That's my Centerline. OK. So that's the actual process of saving a run here. And I can do things. I can do lots of things. But I can save these runs from run browser in any of these trends or displays. Now we'll talk about moving on actually using these runs. Kind of the meat of this. So once you've saved a selected run or a golden run, you can really add that to any display powered by the run browser. So if you wanted to, of course, use it in trend or Centerline, we've seen that. But you can also say add it to an XY plot or a histogram or even Pareto charts. You do lots of different things with this. Anywhere that you can use the run browser. As stated before, you can also return these selected runs automatically based on the priority. And that's a sort of a grade-based process, because you'll notice that these were all attached to a grade. So it's a grade-based process where you say, for all the grades, or all the runs in this grade, return these based on priority. And then, of course, we can use them in these custom tools and calculations. So there's a lot of potential here. There's a lot of design space. Since these are saved to the database, it means they're available to anything that can access the database. So, of course, ParkView. But then things like Excel sheets and Park reports and various other things as well. OK. So let's look at actually adding a golden run to this display. So here I have a run browse trend, but this time I put it in compare mode, so everything's kind of on top of each other. And here we see those five runs, and I want to go ahead and add my selected run to it. So I can go ahead and right click in a moment. There we are. Press Run Browser. And here in my Selected Runs tab, so I'll press Get Runs. And from here, I can just drag and drop. So click anywhere on this row and drag over. And once I've done that, we'll see that Golden Run Reactor number 3 has shown up. And this is actually a new feature in 7.0. You can highlight these individually, so we can compare it that way. Or we can compare them one by hiding everything, and then just sort of hiding and unhiding other runs. So it makes it really simple to just do a visual comparison of these runs. Now I can also bring them back automatically, and I'm going to go ahead and stop this so we can do this kind of from whole cloth. But here, if you use this is all centered around the grade functionality. So if you use either current grade or specific grade, anything that returns a single grade, you'll get this option down here, include selected runs. So if I check that off, it will let me pick how many runs I want to return. And so that will be in priority order. So if I chose 2, I'd get the top 2 priority, etc. I only have the 1, so I'll just go ahead and load these runs in trend. And now we see automatically I get that Golden Run Reactor number 3 back. That's a way just to add those in automatically. Now in Centerline, similar process, looks a little bit different. So I've got my selected runs area, go ahead and press Get Runs. And then again, I will drag and drop it here. And now we see there's my golden run. It's even golden in color. And so from here, we can do aggregate analysis. So that's what Centerline is for, where we see, in this case, a time average over that run, and we can compare it to the other runs in the returned by the run browser. And similar to what we did in Trend just now, we can also configure this to use those included selected runs. We can pull back things a lot of different ways. And of course, depending on the display, this will look, of course, a little bit different. The process will be the same, but the results, of course, will be different. Okay. So now let's talk about some custom tools. So this is actually something that one of our sales engineers, Michael Halmy, made. And he actually presented on this in 2018 at our conference. But it is a way for you to pull back runs that meet certain criteria to determine if they should be golden runs. So for example, here you can pick a start time and end time, so you get all the runs between those 2 times. You can pick a process area and specific grade. And then you can return those, and you can pick a, say, cost function. So there's different kinds of cost function here. This, I think, returns based on speed, production rate. But you can return on other criteria as well. And you can also say, define certain constraints that they should have. So in this case, production stoppages, there should be less than a certain percentage. It looks like less than 10%. But then this will bring back all the runs that correspond to that search function. And then through there, you can look at each individual one, look at their cost function, and just determine which should be your golden run. So this is a kind of a really easy way to do these sort of calculations. And it was also tied to a what's changed tool. So this was in an Excel where you were able to select a specific run and then compare it against all the golden runs that correspond to the same production characteristic. So grade, which same grade in that. So From here, we could also see how far, on average, did this run deviate from our golden runs. And so the important point here is that you want several golden runs, because you want to determine if there's any sort of outlier, right? A true deviation would deviate wildly from all of these golden runs. Whereas if it only deviated from one, there might be something a little bit more interesting and perhaps might reveal something about your process. But in this case, say we see this line here, we've got about negative 37, 36%, and that might be an indicator of say what went wrong here. And if you can say tie that to a quality metric, you might even be able to learn some things about your process by correlating those differences between your massively different tag versus the quality that it may have affected. Okay. And here's something actually I presented on in that same time, these golden limit calculations. These are kind of neat. They essentially, you pick a golden run and they just repeat that golden run's data at the beginning of every batch. So we'll see here that it just has this golden run data and just goes over and over and over, shows the same profile. It's also phase aware. So that way, if you see different phases in your batch, if one say takes too long, it will wait until the next phase opens to show that phase's data. Otherwise, batch would take longer and shorter. And so otherwise, if you got off by a little bit, it would just knock off your analysis the whole way. So instead, this is phase aware. And then you could use it in a bunch of different ways. Again, in calculations, we could use it as a set point. In this case, we're actually using it as limits, where we add, say, some values or standard deviations above and below, and then use that as a process envelope to ensure that we're staying within that good envelope. Okay. All right. So in summary, let's talk about what we've discussed this training. So golden runs, again, are these ideal periods of production that you want to keep. And we can use them to prevent deviation. So like in the previous example where we can go back, actually, previous example where we can see that this is going to go out, and you might make a process change there that will ensure that it doesn't go too far out. So you can use them to prevent deviation, calculate certain metrics for your entire process to improve it in that way. And then we can also use it to analyze process issues in the past. So sort of like that Excel tool where we may be able to tie quality metrics to deviations and analyze what went wrong. We can use the run browser to find and save these golden runs in our various types of displays, or even so in that custom display as well. And then once they are saved, these runs are available in ParkView displays and beyond, right, in custom tools that you can use as well. And those custom tools can add really a lot of value to golden runs and to your process. Okay, so that's all I wanted to talk about today. I appreciate your attendance. We'll end this with a little bit of Q&A, but otherwise, if there are any questions, I really appreciate your attendance, and I look forward to discussing this with you in the future. Thanks. Bye.
Hello, Nick. Thanks for the presentation. And we're going to jump to Q&A. And just a reminder, if people look at their chat windows, you should see some, at least from either round, two round buttons at the top, one to switch between chat and question. I try to check both, so no big deal if you put in the chat one. But if you hit a little question mark button, you can make sure we don't miss any of your questions. And thank you for that. I've seen there's a couple of people out there that are copying and pasting other people's questions from the chat into the question thing. So thanks for those of you that are staying on top of that. So a couple of the questions. Nick, is there a way to delete saved runs? So once I saved them, but I know I want to retire it, how do I delete it?
So there is so it would be the Parkview Explorer and Tools, there's a saved runs or selected runs tool, and that's where you can actually view and edit all of your selected runs, and then from there you can simply delete them. And that should be behind a password, so it's not like anybody can just get in there and delete all your runs. Yeah, you can delete them from there. It's not something that you get to through Run Browser. Again, it's kind of a security thing, but yes, you can.
Mm-hmm. And I just went and checked it because I wasn't sure. And yeah, you just pick a row and hit the delete key. And then it does the usual thing. Are you sure you want to do what you're doing? And you say yes. Within Centerline specifically, that's in need to delete the save run so operators can find the correct golden run to load. So I think, and there's another one around that about they would like the correct grade-based golden run to load in the Centerline, and then like when there's a grade change, to unload that one and put in a new one. Is there ways to do that, settings or checkboxes, to get it so that it will automatically load and clear the grade-based selected run?
Yeah. So if you set your Run Browser to current grade, so that would be every whatever your current grade is building, that is the run it's going to return. And then we discuss that option include selected runs, and then you can choose how many you want to include. That will automatically bring back those grades, and this is where that priority is really important. So it will bring them back based on their priority. So there, you can either remove priority or ensure the things that you want are, say, all the same priority, and then it will bring back however many you ask, how many you request. I'm muting myself. There we go. Okay.
Yeah.
Then we'll bring back however many runs you request.
Okay, and I think those,
just like you saw in there, they're all that golden color, just to indicate they're all golden runs.
Yeah, makes the column header a slightly different color.
No, I can't hear Aaron, so this is a problem. There we go. Let's try that.
I could ask and answer my own questions. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Now we had a question that came in, I think, before you showed the graph of where you turned your golden run into control limits, but it was again that want to know, could you use SBC upper and lower bounds in live data based on the golden run? And you did show that. Maybe a couple comments on like how easy, difficult to set that up is, where you turn your golden runs into limits.
Yeah, so those calculations are just calculations that we've built. They don't come out as standard. You just request them from us and we'll give them to you. And then it's just applying the golden run calculation to whatever tag that you want to apply those limits to, and then it's the same process as applying limits to anything, right? So you can go to the limits tool, select the tag checkbox, and then put those calculated tags in there. And then, if you want to save those tags, you can then add calculations on top of them. And so from there, you can also do sort of interesting things. So you, of course, when you have just the golden limits tag, you're just going to get the same data over and over again. But you could then say add a calculated, even dynamically calculated standard deviation above and below that. Generally, you'd probably calculate a single standard deviation, just add that, but.
And then other formulas that we can provide people can be grade-based and phase-based.
Yes.
Too, to try to line them up. So you can have different golden runs for different grades. And if your phases, of course, are usually going to be slightly different length run to run, it will try to line up the beginning with each phase with the golden run beginning of that phase.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And like you said, just talk to us, reach out to engineering support group or your area manager, and we can help you with that. So the display tools, you custom tools that you showed, like you mentioned, Neil showed, or Michael Holme showed a few conferences ago, or one conference ago. Is that available? Is that something that we can share?
That's certainly something that we could. So that was, of course, made for a certain site. So they're going to have their own settings, and it may not also just not be appropriate for all types of processes. So of course it is grade based. So if your process isn't grade based or isn't grade based yet, we'd need to make some changes. But otherwise, there's not really any reason that you wouldn't be able to, with some slight programming changes to that, make it for your site. So yeah, that shouldn't really be an issue. It's kind of the purpose of programming is to make something we can use over and over and over again. The programmer's favorite two keys: Control C and Control V. So yeah, it should be totally possible.
Yeah, and I think if I remember correctly, that was built to help find runs within more of a continuous process instead of a batch process. So it probably, like you said, easily adapted to any continuous process. It was mostly based on averages. Yeah, batch gets a little different.
Yeah.
Are there graphical visuals to display Centerline or golden runs in a bar scale for continuous tags? Trying to think exactly what we're asking there. I mean, we've used golden runs, and actually, in truth, our limit editor in Excel can use roll-up data to help calculate limits. So technically, from there, you can kind of pick out runs that you want to use to calculate limits. So that could work as well. And this guy gets just a graphics dashboard. Have you ever worked with Nick or helping you build a dashboard that would, show anything around golden runs, or if you're tracking to the golden run or not tracking to the golden run?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So for example, actually that custom tool that Michael Holme had presented on was built in bar graphics, actually. So that's one thing. But in terms of actually visualizing the graphics themselves, or sorry, the golden runs themselves, that would take that's a little bit more custom. But of course, you can always just embed any of our displays in a graphic, and since they're just like our regular displays, you can do everything that I just showed on, right? Everything that I just did could be completely replicated in a graphic. However, when you start talking about things like showing bar graphs and things like that, that becomes a little bit more custom. But otherwise, very, 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 very possible. I don't think we've ever, at least I've never built anything like that myself, but certainly.
Yeah, because in the same way that we could use limits, we could build formulas using the same method that could be like deviation from golden run, or some of the errors, or something like that. And then, of course, you get into park model.
Yeah.
And there's also using your golden batches to help you build your model. And then within those models, it can show you on more of a multivariable sense of, are you deviating from the runs you use to build the model.
Actually, I guess that's where a lot of the benefit is with golden runs and the calculations, is that you can use them in other places. It's really nice to be able to use your past data and then start calculating based on it. Very, very useful, very interesting kind of stuff you can do.
Yeah, and some of the stuff Adam showed last session that we've added to the run browser with filter criteria was partly inspired by the work that Michael Holme and a few others did at the site, of a way to identify it. So making that part of a standard tool that you could build some criteria and then find the runs, order by runs, and pull the data in, and then help you select as there. Okay, I think that's all. We do have a last request again to basically that little conversation we just had. How hard is it to get from a golden run to SPC limits of it? Is a great webinar. So Nick, we'll have you come back and teach us a little. Peel back the onion a little more and teach us all of that. I think that's all we have for questions, unless you had anything that you see, Nick, or anything you wanted to add.
I don't think so. I think we're pretty well covered, and I believe we've covered all the questions I saw there. Make sure anybody pipes up if that's the case that we missed your question. I'd certainly like to answer it here. But otherwise, yeah, I think that's everything.
Yeah. Okay. Well, great, Nick. Thanks for joining us. And our next session will be with another Nick Eimers. We like to keep things simple for me so I don't forget names. But he'll be doing park task workflows triggered from alarms. And that will start at 9:50 my time. So I'm doing math right, about 15 minutes. So please come back and join us for that one, and listen to another one of our Nicks going through a little bit of examples and training too. So again, thank you everybody, and talk to you soon.